take all the pictures you want, ask all the questions you want. Nothing out here is classified. Everything is somewhat sensitive. Doors on the side of the building. We could talk about it later. It's going to be a test. Visitors. Mainly what visitors were maintenance teams. A lot of times maintenance teams would be working on a site that was real far away from Ellsworth, okay? If they worked more than 16 hours, the timeline expired, they couldn't go back to Ellsworth for safety reasons. They would come to the nearest launch control. Carpeting that was here back then, but it's the same color. And it's a light color. That road out there gets muddy and nasty and whatnot. So, okay, this is where people kind of ate and slept and well, not slept, but you know, watched TV and enjoyed life when they weren't working. Those of us who were around during the 70s loved colors like this. Okay, the harvest gold, avocado green. I wish it's been avocado green. I would have been interior leads in the hallway too.
Yeah.
And some shag carpeting and a couple of these bottles with melted candles for sure. Okay. Now, you've probably all heard the concept of fraud, waste, and abuse when it comes to government contracts and whatnot. We buy $200 hammers, we buy $500 toilet seats. I'm kind of making this, okay? That's the same cable they use on the space shuttle. You know, you see it disconnect when it launches at Cape Canaveral. Okay. And the other four sites in the squadron back in 1992. The First President Bush signed the START agreement with Gorbachev in 1991. The warheads were taken off immediately. The missiles were off alert, but it took a while, a couple of years, to get everything out of the silos, out to around patrol. This is the guy in charge. He guards the gate. Now, nobody came out here on a whim. Nobody came out here. Wow. That would be very, very, very symbolic. They should have told somebody. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, come on. Their own after that. One obvious element of survivability is we're underground. This is like 30 feet down. I think it's deeper than that, but that's what their manual says, 30 feet. Some were 60 feet, some were 90 feet. Another element of survivability are the walls. They're all 6 foot thick, reinforced with steel. And credit cards, if you need to buy gas in an emergency, you can stop at the wall, you know, buy gas. Daryl.
Okay.
Excuse me. Okay, another element of survivability is this 16,000-pound blast line. Okay, it's like this wide. When you get up to here, you'll see there are steel pins at both ends. When the crew would take over, they would close the door. There's a hydraulic pump handle on the back here. There's a chain link fence. There's a big gate. There's 6 young guys with guns, okay? It never happened, but it could have happened that bad guys could have taken off over upstairs. Only taken one casualty so far this year. The ceiling there. Okay, people use the term capsule. This is the capsule, okay? The capsule is essentially a cave. It's a 6 foot thick cave in the shape of a capsule. And this is the launch control center behind me. It's not attached to the capsule. It's hanging from it. 2 shotguns, a big explosion nearby. The ground was shaken violently. The capsule was shaken violently. By not being attached, okay, hopefully it would have reduced the shaking enough to survive. It was never actually used, so we don't know. Okay, so for 30 years you had 2 people down here, deputy over here, commander over here. The shifts up there were like 3 days. Down here the shifts were different shifts. For a while they had the 40-hour shifts. By 40 hours I mean they had 3 8-hour shifts down here pulling alert and 2 8-hour shifts upstairs where they ate, slept, played basketball, etc. They couldn't sleep down here. In the computer panel over there, the computer would interrogate all the missiles all the time. It would get responses back. If everything was okay, the only light that would be lit for those 10 missiles would be the top one. A green light saying strategic alert. If there was a problem, a nasty buzzer would go off, and depending on the missile and depending on the problem, one or more lights would light up. Fault light, DC no-go, LF status out, whatever. They would also get, I hate to say this when really young people are here, a paper tape with more data, you know. People go, paper tapes, what's that? It's like so 60s, you know. So they get more data there. They could also, they called interrogating versions. It was a system of voice recording at each missile that could, they press a button and they could get a recording over here saying what the problem was. They'd take all that data that they had, essentially call it into job control, to maintenance at the base. They'd take care of the problem. A common question, and it's a very natural one, is while people were down here, were things really tense? Were they uptight? Were they worried about that go-to-war message coming at any point in time about launching missiles? And the answer is pretty much no. Things were not uptight. Things were fairly relaxed out here. They might be busy sometimes, but they weren't tense. The assumption was that if we had gone to war, it wouldn't have happened just like that, out of the blue. Over a period of time, our relationship with the Soviet Union, whether that's weeks or months, might have gotten worse and worse. During that period of time, all the nuclear crews, these guys, the B-52 people, the submarines on patrol, will be getting a series of messages, getting them more and more ready to do their thing, to reduce the reaction time. You've probably heard the term DEFCON. The crews would have gotten DEFCON messages over that speaker over there, encoded letters and numbers. In this command, they also would have gotten posture messages. Posture 1, meaning day-to-day readiness, up through posture 8. Posture 8 is, now things are tense. In the trainer, when you got a posture 7 or a posture 8, you always went to war right after that. Posture 8, things that are really bad, it's probably going to happen. The B-52s are on their way to the targets already under positive controlled launch. Posture 8, these guys are pretty much ready all the time. They're really at work here. Posture 8, they would have been authorized to take their locks off the safe. Commander and deputy both had one. They would take out their launch keys. No buttons, keys, okay. The deputy would have put his key over here. Commander would have put his key in the slot under that blue hat where it says 66. They also would have taken out their sealed authenticators and put them on the console. And I'll talk about those in a second. Okay, so they're sitting here. They wouldn't have this book anymore. That's day-to-day tech data. They would have a big binder full of emergency action checklists. They copy down the DEFCON messages and all the other messages. The message, if it had come, would have come over that speaker. A series of letters and numbers would have sounded something like Alpha, 0, 2, November, 5, Foxtrot. You know, I love saying that. It just sounds so cool. Okay. They would copy the preamble. The first 6 digits of that message, you know, the Alpha 02 stuff, that was the preamble. They had a decoding book. They would decode the preamble. That told them what kind of message they were getting. They would open up to that particular checklist and copy it down. After they copied the message, the next most important thing was to validate the message, to make sure it's a good message. You probably heard that anytime the president goes anyplace, he's followed around by a guy with a suitcase full of nuclear codes and stuff, okay? If the Joint Chiefs of Staff had convinced the president to authorize the use of nuclear weapons, they would go to that suitcase and pull out one of several sealed authenticators. It's a rigid plastic card. They'd crack it open. 6 letters and numbers. They would transmit those letters and numbers. The crew would copy them down. The crew had the same edition of the seal authenticator here and there. They'd crack open theirs and make sure the 6 letters and numbers are the same. 2 people had to verify that. If they were the same, they pressed on. If not, they just stopped. They might call for a retransmission. Maybe we copied it wrong, but they wouldn't do anything else. Okay. The next thing they would do is another 6 letters, or 6 numbers rather, in that message was the enable code. Deputy would dial that from the message into here and throw that switch over there. The fun begins now. Lots of bells start going off. And for all the missiles over there, you'd see a yellow light. It would say enable, enable, enable. Enabling sort of plugs the missile in. It allows the missile to receive the launch code later on. Without the enable code, you could turn keys all day long. Nothing's going to happen. Another element in the message was a preparatory launch command. 2-digit number. Deputy would dial that in here, throw the switch over here. That command told the missiles, when they turn keys finally, which are going, which are being held back for possible launch later on. It also told the missiles which of its 6 pre-programmed targets it was going to hit. A lot of flexibility in terms of the number of missiles and the combination of targets. One last thing the crew was looking for in the message was an execution reference time, a date time group. That told the crews, it allowed the crews to compute what time they were going to turn keys. At that point, it takes 2 people to do that, not 1. It takes 2 people to validate messages, 2 people to make toast, 2 people to turn keys. Okay, to make sure one person doesn't do the whole thing, the key slots are 12 feet apart. They had to be turned simultaneously. Once they were turned, you'd see a lot of bells again, and for those missiles that were going, lights would light up. Launch commanded, launch commanded, launch commanded. The missile is now waiting for 1 more launch control center to turn keys, like we talked about upstairs. There were 5, it just took 2. Once at least 1 more crew turned keys, then you'd see missile away, missile away, missile away. Missile away means they're gone, ain't coming back, can't change your mind. There's no red button to press to destroy them. Nothing can catch them. No rocket, no other plane. They're gone, okay? Another common question is, okay, were the number of missiles that you had and their locations and their capabilities classified? No. We wanted the Soviets to know how many we had, and more importantly, how good they were. The Minuteman was an innovation. It was the first ICBM that was solid fuel. Very few moving parts. Very dependable. The alert rate, or the percentage of missiles that could be launched at any point in time, over the years, was like 99-point-something%. They were very fast out of the hole. After the crews turned keys, a minute later they would start launching. With little kids, I'll go, a minute later. Minuteman? Minute? Get? Oh, yeah, right. Okay. They were very fast towards the target, like 15,000 miles an hour, or roughly the speed that people drive in California, where I'm from. The difference being that the Minuteman was a lot safer than driving in California. Also, they were very accurate. Occasionally they would take a missile out of the launch facility, take the warhead off, transport it to California, out of Vandenberg Air Force Base. They'd fire it at a barge 4,000 miles across the Pacific, near an island called Kwajalein. Over the life of the system, about half of them would land within a quarter mile of the target. That's pinpoint accuracy. They were very powerful. Each warhead, and the Minuteman II had 1 warhead. Minuteman III had 3 warheads. Each warhead had the equivalent of 1.2 million tons of TNT. Some historian or mathematician or scientist with a lot of time on his hands calculated that's 60% of all the munitions that went off in World War II, the entire war, including the 2 bombs over Japan. So, the Russians had much bigger, much more powerful weapons than we did. They weren't as fast, they weren't as accurate, but they could have done lots and lots of damage here. But they knew that because of weapons like the Minuteman, they couldn't prevent us from doing a lot more damage over there. That policy, as we probably all heard, was called mutual assured destruction, or MAD. In my opinion, it wasn't mad, it was insane. But it worked. Any questions? Got my paycheck.
Okay. Well, I see volunteer on your shoulder here. Does that mean I'm doing this because I'm just having a good time? Or?